Hello and welcome back to World 360. For today's three topics, we are looking at a range of issues from terrorism and fake news to oil and gas, which, as you know, is a scarce commodity these days. Central Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East are the regions we'll be focusing on. So without further ado, let's get into the first issue that we're talking about in this episode, terrorism. Over the weekend, Pakistan's embassy in Afghanistan was attacked. The target was head of mission Ubaidur Rahman Nizamani, who was taking a walk in the Pakistan embassy compound in Kabul when shooting began. He escaped unhurt, but a security guard was critically injured. On Monday, the terror group Islamic State or IS claimed responsibility for the attack. Now, an attack on a diplomatic mission is serious, so much so that the head of the mission has returned to Pakistan. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, President Arif Alvi, and Foreign Minister Bilawal-Bhutto Zardari all condemned what they viewed as an assassination attempt on the envoy. So far, the Afghan government spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid has confirmed that a foreign member of the IS group has been arrested in connection with the attack. But regardless of what transpires from here on, the timing of this attack couldn't be worse considering tensions have been rising between Pakistan and Afghanistan over the last few months. And then there's of course the elephant in the room, the Pakistan-Taliban or the TTP. Let's understand where these tensions are stemming from. Yes, many experts and analysts across the world credited Pakistan with helping the Taliban come back to power last August, but since then, much has changed. As many experts have pointed out, Pakistan isn't dealing with the Taliban of, say, the late 90s. Dawood Khattak, a senior editor for Radio Free Europe Radio Liberty's Pashto language, Mashal, explained this very well to my editor Praveen Swami as well as me last month.
Taliban was something when it was a purely fighting force, fighting against the NATO forces, the US forces, ISAF forces. At that time, Pakistan and Taliban interests were converging. But now, when the Taliban have taken over Kabul, so it doesn't seem like the same unity group. There are, when I'm saying fault lines, so the fault lines are now emerging. Some are pro-Pakistan, some are anti-Pakistan.
Let's not forget that Afghanistan and Pakistan are neighbors and share a border where there have been many shootings and skirmishes of late. The Chaman border in Balochistan, for example, was temporarily closed last month after an armed man from the Afghan side reportedly opened fire on Pakistani security personnel. Also, Pakistan has been trying to erect a fence on the border since January this year. But since it is a disputed border that dates back to the British era, elements in Afghanistan have attempted to tear down the fence on multiple occasions. For example, in January this year, videos emerged on social media purportedly showing members of the Afghan Taliban tearing down parts of the border fence and seizing spools of barbed wire. There were also military skirmishes in December last year in border areas like Ganjgal, Sarkano and Kunar. Pakistan is also very concerned about the growth of the TTP or the Pakistan Taliban. Last week, the banned group ended a months-long ceasefire with the Pakistan government, ordering its fighters to resume attacks across the country. Now, before the IS group claimed responsibility for the recent Pakistan embassy attack, an editorial from Pakistani newspaper Dawn suspected the TTP had a role to play. On December 4th, the editorial stated, "There has been no claim of responsibility yet, but the timing of the attack on Pakistan's embassy in Kabul strongly suggests a link with the TTP, calling off its ceasefire with the Pakistani state only days ago." Now, before we conclude this topic, I want to remind you of what happened in January this year. Pakistan's National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf was scheduled to visit Afghanistan on 18th and 19th January to discuss the border fencing issue with the Taliban regime. But he cancelled this visit last minute amid anti-Pakistan protests in Afghanistan. Now, the NSA ended up visiting Kabul a week later after the situation settled down, during which Afghanistan acting Deputy Prime Minister assured him that Afghan soil would not be used against its neighbors, including Pakistan. But given the recent incidents at the Chaman border and now the TTP and even the Pakistan embassy attack, such statements don't seem to be reflecting the on-ground reality. Let's move on to what's happening in Iran, or rather what's not happening in Iran. There seems to be an international debate brewing over whether Western media has misreported statements made by an Iranian official about quote-unquote disbanding the morality police in Iran. To jog your memory, Mahsa Amini, the woman whose death sparked nationwide protests in Iran, was arrested by Iran's morality police, also known as the Gasht-e-Irshad, for violating hijab rules, after which she allegedly died from police brutality. Now on Sunday, Iran's Attorney General Mohammad Jafar Montazari said the morality police has nothing to do with the judiciary system. The same source that created it in the past, from the same place it has shut down. Of course, the judiciary system will continue its surveillance of social behaviors across society. Now, the New York Times, for example, said this appeared to be the first concession to the protest movement. The newspaper also went as far as to say this appeared to be a significant victory for feminists in Iran. The Wall Street Journal also claimed that Iran abolished the morality police, despite the Attorney General's vague comments. Meanwhile, Iran's state TV, Al-Alam, has denied claims that the morality police was abolished. Some CNN journalists, which had initially shared the NYT article, issued clarifications too. So, to clarify, Iran's morality police has not been abolished, and the enforcement of Islamic Sharia laws continues in the country. Author Arish Azizi has interestingly explained what may have led to the misinterpretation of the comments made by Iran's Attorney General. He points out that the Iranian official did say that the morality police have been shut, leading many to report that it had been shut down and abolished. Journalists like Nahayat Tejush, however, have explained that Montazeri is not in charge of the regime's morality police. He didn't specify who allegedly shut down the morality police, and most importantly, he did promise to continue enforcement of the country's Islamic Sharia laws. Now, this entire incident has prompted a larger debate about responsible reporting. In fact, a report in the Jerusalem Post explains that this isn't the first time that misleading reports have come out of Iran. It gives the example of what happened last February when reports indicated that Iran's supreme leader had supposedly issued a fatwa against having nuclear weapons. But if that was true, then why did the West need to make a deal to prevent them from developing nuclear weapons? The report asks. With the hijab laws seemingly still intact in Iran, it remains to be seen whether there will be any victory for feminists or protesters in the country. For our last topic of the day, we travel further east to the Philippines, a country that seems keen to go on a solo exploration of oil and gas with China out of the equation. Last week, Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., who entered the post just 6 months ago, said his country must find a way to explore oil and gas in the South China Sea even without a deal with China. Now, back in June, the previous Philippines government had said talks between China and the Philippines to explore oil and gas in the region had been halted due to constitutional constraints and issues of sovereignty. Reports are now indicating that Marcos Jr.'s government is considering allowing Forum Energy, a US-based oilfield products company, to proceed with petroleum exploration on the Reed Bank, an area under dispute with China. As you may know, Philippines and China have many maritime and territorial disputes over the Scarborough Reef, the Spratly Islands, and other parts of the South China Sea. In 2018, the two countries signed an MOU to negotiate arrangements on an accelerated basis to facilitate oil and gas exploration in maritime areas. But since then, negotiations have been rocky. Let's not forget that the Philippines relies heavily on imported fuel, making it vulnerable to supply shocks and rising oil prices that were recently brought on by the Ukraine war. Inflation is nearing a 14-year high in the Philippines, and food and energy prices have seen a significant increase as well. And therefore, exploration of oil and gas is definitely the need of the hour for this country. Thank you so much for watching. This is Pia Krishnankutty for ThePrint. Do subscribe to ThePrint and follow us on social media.